I'm Harry Ochieng. I work with Co-Creation Hub or CC Hub. Here in Kenya, it's a subsidiary of IAB is a subsidiary of CC Hub. So CC Hub was founded in Nigeria. The headquarters is in Nigeria. Then in 2019, they acquired iHub. I believe you are known so much about EdTech and a number of programs that we are running, like the MasterCard EdTech Fellowship, the Spark Accelerator, and many other things. Before I went to IAB, I worked at Innovate Now, and still part of Innovate Now in a way, supporting IT startups in venture building and fundraising. So this is a journey that I've walked with startups. I can see very familiar faces who will help me deliver this class because they know that this journey is not easy. It requires strategy and being intentional. Sawa sawa. Yeah, so allow me to say that fundraising is not easy. More so, fundraising in Africa is not very easy. And a lot of adjustments taking place within the continent. Day by day, it is becoming to be more difficult. I think if I'm correct, the VC space is around 10 years in Africa. If I'm not wrong, it is not very old compared to other developed economies. And the last 10 years, we've not seen a lot of returns or a lot of exit as it was expected. But again, what is happening is that the market is going through what we call self-correction because investors and innovators are getting to realize that the models that are working in US and in Europe, they may not be the best for Africa. They may not be the best model for Africa. So as in Africa, we have to come up with our own models. I read an article that was trying to analyze this, and the writer was arguing that in Africa, the other markets, they need a horse. These are startups that can grow 20 times within short time, 100 times. So it's like a horse. But in Africa, we need a camel. Slow but sure, resilient. But we are trying to make African startups to be like a horse when they need to be a camel. In other words, what I'm trying to say that there's a lot of adjustment that is taking place. And in all that, fundraising is becoming difficult. And it will be difficult until we find a model that is working. Yeah, so, and for you to fundraise, it begins with investor readiness. Don't repeat a mistake I did. I was once a founder, and I think I pitched to every investor I could meet, but those pitches did not go far. Yeah, so I really pitched any investor you can think of. I think I pitched at Antler around 3 times. 3 times, and I was not taken in. I pitched to several investors until I became angry. I was not happy. I decided to do a course in venture capital and fundraising, a 6-month fellowship, just to understand why is these people, they don't want to give me their money. And I have the solution to the world. You know, I have a very innovative product, very impactful, but they are not giving you money. You know, you just keep pitching and all that. So I decided to take a fellowship, a 6-month fellowship, training and fellowship on venture capital. Then I realized, oh, now I know. I realized that even if I was an investor, I would not invest in my own business. Are we together? Yeah. So one of the key things that I was ignoring is investor readiness. I was raising funds when I was not ready to raise. So fundraising begins from investor readiness. Before you are investor ready, please spare yourself the stress, spare the investor the time, and spare yourself the time. Do justice to yourself. Don't try raising until you are investor ready, because, and one of the industry I've realized there are no miracles is fundraising. It will not work. We can move to the next slide. Yeah, so basically, this will be a very short session. We'll try to cover those, if time allows us, components of investor readiness, types of available funding, because you have to target the right kind of funding, depending with your stage, depending with your industry, and many things. Due diligence is essential. You need to do what is called internal due diligence, because investors will do due diligence on you. What do investors look for? And making sure that you have all the investment materials, so that when you start engaging with the investor, then it's a smooth process. Creating deal rooms, and how do you engage investors? Yeah, so that is what we are going to discuss, and I believe we'll be able to learn one or two. So allow me to say that fundraising is difficult in Africa, but more difficult for 80 startups. One of the things that I love with 80 startup assistive technology is these are startups that is focused on impact. Very impactful, very high potential for impact. But investors, yes, apart from the impact, they also want to have a return. So that makes it a bit complex. But again, also we understand that in the 80, people still hold perspectives that when you talk about assistive technology, and the commonly used word out there, what people are more familiar with is disability, then the first thing that comes to people's mind, including investor, is grant. So the moment you say that you are building a solution targeting people living with disabilities, then at the mind of somebody, they're already thinking of, you want a grant. They're already feeling like they're not going to get their money back. So for an 80 innovator, it means, number one, you first have to educate. It begins with educating the ecosystem. It begins with educating the investors. And help them understand that 80 is not just about grant, but there's a business opportunity. So that makes it a bit complex compared to other startups. And that is how I define 80. 80 startups are companies dedicated to developing technology solutions for persons. I come from the lake, so if I swallow English, just bear with me. For persons with disabilities, 80, then we have startups that we can classify as 80 market enablers. So these are startups or ventures that help unlock the purchasing power of distribution and markets consolidation, financing, insurance, and marketing. So any startup that enable that ecosystem, we can classify them as AT enabler startups. Yeah, so I believe that is where we are. You could not be directly in AT, but you could be enabling AT. So investor readiness is the comprehensive, and I ought to have underlined or bold the word comprehensive, because it's not just, preparation, but it's a comprehensive preparation of a business to attract, to make it attractive to investors, and to secure external investment. And how do you do that? The business must demonstrate viability, that it's a business that when you put your money, an investor put their money, then they are going to have returns. You have to show that the business has the potential to grow, and everything goes down to strong financial foundational returns. So that is investor readiness. You want to prepare the business to be attractive to investors and to show that there's a potential to grow, to show that the business is viable, and to show that there is potential for financial growth. So that is what we aim to achieve. Once you achieve that, you will find it easy with the investors. But before you reach here, I can assure you are going to do a lot of work that may not bear any fruit. Are we together? How many still love me? Let me see. Yes. Yeah, so why investor readiness? We want to ensure that all aspects of the business are optimized. Remember, I said that when you pitch to an investor, the idea can be very good. But investors will do what is called due diligence. And due diligence, when investors are doing due diligence, the due diligence, I always describe it as a way of investor looking for a reason not to invest. Somebody is looking for a mistake. So the due diligence from the investor perspective is they are trying to find a reason why they should not invest. So we have to optimize our business. We have to identify the gaps, and we have to seal those gaps. Or the gaps that we are not able to seal in the immediate, we need to have a good strategy to fill those gaps. It could be an issue of the team. Then we need to have a strategy to hire the right team members. For example, if you are a founder of an AT startup and you don't have a technical founder, that is already a good reason why an investor should not put their money, because they don't think the team has the capacity. Then number two, build confidence in investors. So we want to package our business in a way that the investor will be confident that this business is sustainable, it is going to generate returns, and it is going to grow. It doesn't matter how big the market size is. If the business is not strategically positioned and we don't have the right structures, then the market size is just but numbers. Then accelerate the fundraising process. Like the due diligence process, I've seen founders begin engage investors. Investors are very happy. But when the investors start engaging, then they realize that some key documents are missing. So by the time you are putting together these documents, when you are coming back, they have found an alternative startup. They have deployed that capital. And there's a way, there's what we call portfolio. Every investor has a portfolio. And this portfolio, it describes, we are going to invest in this number of startups. This is how we are going to diversify. We'll invest in this number of startups in education, this in technology and all that, just to diversify the risk. So if by any chance an investor gets an alternative startup that become part of the portfolio and is aligned to your startup, then they won't invest because they have to stick to the portfolio construction. So we want to ensure that by the time an investor expresses interest, the moment you start engaging, you are stopping at the bank, the transfers. We don't want anything to delay the process, to stop the process, because the moment the process is stopped, then you stand to lose. Are we together? So investor readiness will help us accelerate the fundraising process. And the fundraising process itself takes long. It's always around, give it between 6 to 12 months from the time you start engaging an investor to the time you receive the money in the bank or the time you sign the term sheet. So you don't want to delay that further. Are we together? Yeah, so that is why investor readiness is very important and what we want to achieve. So what does it mean to be investor ready? So investor ready means you have identified the strength and the gaps and you are addressing them. So you need to understand your core strength. You need to understand the gaps. You need to have a strategy to maximize your strength. And you need to have a strategy to fill the gaps that you are having in the business. So if you go through investor readiness, then you will take that. You also want to have a targeted ask. How many are fundraising? I'm talking to people who don't need money. How many are fundraising? How much are you raising?
I currently don't know the details.
The guy is fundraising, but he doesn't know the amount. You understand? Yeah.
Thank you very much. Happy to meet you all, investors and my fellow innovators. Basically, I'm from East Coast and we are fundraising. We need $15,000 to handle our product design. Thank you.
So the whole 50,000 will go into product design? Just design, not development. The other aspect, like marketing and all that taken care of, you already have money for that? So you are going to have the product, then you start looking for money for the next 12 months to take it to the market. You understand? So investor readiness help you know the exact amount of money that you need. And it's not just quoting figures. You can break it down. That if you give the investor your budget, they can see this is a well thought and a well-designed budget. I've seen founders fundraising and they forget their salaries. So they get the money, then they realize they cannot pay their own salaries. Or somebody is saying they're raising 1 million, and you ask them, an investor asks them, give us the breakdown on how you are going to use this 1 million USD. And they are just talking about it's purely operational cost and all that. So that process, investor readiness, help you to really know a targeted ask backed by a well-designed and a well-thought budget that gives investors confidence that you are not just asking for money. I think there's a term used in the ecosystem. These founders who just keep raising and using the money and raising and using the money, how are they called? They are called what kind of entrepreneurs? So those are some of the things we are also battling with, because we also have founders who their job is to fundraise and to fundraise and to fundraise and to fundraise. So how do you differentiate? And investors are well aware of that. So how do you differentiate yourself from that? It's when you have a very good targeted ask that is not just quoting amounts, but well thought with a very good budget that is aligned to the business strategy and the business goals. Preparing to address investors' concerns, I think in my entire life, people who ask the toughest questions are investors. I think investors are just bright people. Those guys ask difficult questions. I don't know whether one day when I love money and investing, I'll also be asking those tough questions. But I can assure you, these guys are smart. And I told you that an investor, when an investor is interested in your business and they want to know more about your business, they are coming from the point of, why should I not invest? They are looking for a reason not to invest. They are looking for anything that can break that deal. So it's like they are handling it from the worst case scenario. And the worst case scenario will take care of the best case scenario. So they will have concerns. And sometimes when they throw those questions, then you are found off guard. You have never thought about it. And any show that these are things that you have not even figured out or you are not even aware of them, the investors lose confidence in you. Then accelerating due diligence and fundraising process. Yeah, so investor readiness help you that the due diligence will move smoothly. You have all the documentations, and therefore that process move fast. Yes. What investors look for. And I think this is what I was missing in my startup for a very long time. Allow me to start with the exit strategy. But the investors are not here they are not interested in staying in your business for long. In fact, as an investor, if I can invest in your business this year, in the next 6 months, I can exit and get my 3 times return. I'll be very happy. You'll be the best founder. If you start another company, I'll invest again. So you begin with the exit strategy in mind. That is where investors start. When they are sourcing for startup to invest, they look at your business, and the first thing they start figuring out is if there will be an opportunity to exit. What do I mean by exit? Exit simply means when I invest in your business, you give me shares. then the point that I'm going to sell my shares and get my money back times 2, times 3, times whatever, depending with the type of investor, that is what investors look for. They don't want to stay there for long. The faster they exit, the better for them. So you can have a very good business, but if there are no exit opportunities, then it is not attractive to investors. Lillian, can I put you on the spot? Yes. Tell us your exit opportunities in Uptake. I've worked with Lillian, so tutasaidiana. Do you have in your business, have you already figured out exit opportunity if an investor was to invest?
Thank you. Tough question. Yes, no, to some extent. We are still figuring it out. But I think we put ourselves on a 2-year as the maximum number of years, especially with the kind of investors we were getting. 2-year because development and market and also the type of returns we're hoping to get in terms of how we maybe sell our products. We develop digital books. So one of the strategy was definitely onboard a lot of schools for scalability and returns monthly and annually. And also another targeted one, which I'm always told not to rely on, but to some extent it works, it doesn't work, is also government, because government is in the it's their mandate to purchase books for schools, and unless there are delays that like they are at the moment, but that has been the case for the longest time. So if they are purchasing books, that means we're in the business of selling the books to them.
Yeah, so thank you. Priscilla, you want to say something about exit? Okay, tell us how you position your business for exit.
Okay, so we are fundraising for 1 million USD for seed round to scale local learning, and our valuation is at 10 million post money, and projected exit IPO in 2029 is at 120 million USD valuation. So our return on investment is 4.9 times on seed investment, and revenue projection for year 2025 all the way 2029 is at 465K USD. So the impact is on revolutionizing education for millions across Africa.
Thank you. IPO. Yes, you're dreaming big. Thank you, Priscilla, but that's very good. I like how. So what I simply mean is that if an investor cannot see an exit opportunity in the next few years, then it's not a good deal. It doesn't matter your revenue. It doesn't matter how the business is doing and all that. What are some of the exit opportunity? One is an investor can exit in the next round of funding. For example, if I raise a pre-seed of 100,000 USD, then I use that 100,000 USD, and the next time I'm raising seed capital, maybe I'm raising 1 million USD at seed, the investor that are invested at the pre-seed, they can decide to sell their shares. But that is upon the willingness of the investor that is coming in. So that is not a good strategy because fundraising is also difficult. Number two, is mergers and acquisitions. So is there a business, a bigger business that will be interested to buy you out? Are we together? Yeah, so maybe there are big players that will want to move into the market that you're operating in, and they don't want to start afresh. Then they will buy you out. So mergers and acquisition. I have a friend of mine who is doing credit score. And the guy built the business. He didn't sleep. And they captured most of the microfinance. Those loans you are taking in a microfinance and some banks is providing them with a platform to do credit score. They're able to tell you the lifestyle. They analyze. He's able to analyze your lifestyle from your M-Pesa statements. You know, your assets and all those kind of things. So this guy, last year they got a deal. After 3 years, they got a deal of 2.5 M USD by a South African, firm that is buying them out. Yeah, a good deal. 3 years, 2.5 USD. Is it bad or it's good? Yeah, so such kind of things. And of course, IPO, you can decide to build and get into IPO. Always a bit difficult and take longer. Then number 2, allow me to talk about the team, or what I've termed their experience management. I always say that, and this is what investors believe. Investors, they don't invest in the idea. They invest in the team. So you can have a very good idea and a very good solution, but investors will not be attracted to it. Because a great idea being executed by an average team turns out to be an average business. Ama ninaongea vibaya. But an average idea on the hands of a great team has the opportunity to be turned into a great business. So the team is very key. I'm one person that don't believe that people steal ideas. That they stole my idea. What were you doing when they were stealing it? In this industry and in this ecosystem, it's all about execution. It is not about ideas. It is about execution. So a team that is able to execute is very attractive to an investor. And when we are talking about a team, there is what we call founder market fit. Very important. And we always say that if possible, innovate in the area, in the industry that you have experience. If I've been a banker for long and I'm getting into fintech, very aligned. But if I've been, let me give an example, one of the areas that I see there's a lot of mismatch. I have been a banker, then I come up with a net tech solution. My brother or sister, if you don't have an educationist in that team, there's nowhere you are going. Because when you go there, people start talking about pedagogy, learning science. Are we together? They are just sounding scaffolding, strands, substrands. Are we together? Yeah. I think I tried developing an edtech solution, and I thought it's just a platform. You just Google content and put it there. That is not an edtech. So investors want to see founder market fit, that if you are innovating in the fintech space, there's somebody who have been working in the payment industry. At least one. Somebody who have insights that not any other person will have in that industry. Very important. But again, they're also looking for a balanced team. If I'm developing a technology solution and none of us is able to code, there's a problem. Because, yes, you can hire very good engineers, but I can assure you that engineer, the moment Google take note of them and approach them, they will be gone. So at least investors want to see that the team, the founders themselves, can run the business if they are alone. Of course, there's a way to bridge those gaps. You could get good engineers, give them some shares, what we call ESOPs and all that. But the founding team should be balanced and aligned. I've seen teams that they are all engineers. They are all talking about machine learning, AI, deep learning, and all that. And they come to pitch to you. And I have a technology background. I'm already confused. I can't hear what they are saying. They are talking big things. They are talking AI, machine learning, which are the latest terms. So just imagine an investor who has a business background. You understand? But again, tech guys, a team that is purely tech, most of the time, one of the things I've experienced with tech guys is they're good, they fall in love with the solution, they develop it, but taking it out becomes difficult. Ni vizuri ukuwe na mtu mmoja wa nazemanga mdomo yao haiwatupi. In other words, they are good at speaking. Ama nitumie kierere. They can sell what is not there. You need a team member who can go sell something that is not yet developed until the customers paid for it. And they're coming. That we have 2 customers I paid for this. And the product manager is like, what? This thing is going to take 6 months. They have already sold it. And the customers paid. And remember, this is a startup. Money in, money out. Inaingia iki. You need such guys. So the team need to be very balanced. But again, it's important to, in terms of experience, have somebody who have been in the business for some time. If you cannot get, then complement that with a board. If you find yourself a team of young guys who have never have a lot of experience in the industry, you can consider setting up a board. Linda, my time is almost up. Okay. Consider having a board of very experienced people. Experience is very key. Then let me talk about traction. We want to see that you have done something about the idea. There are some customers who are paying and underline paying customers. Because I've seen startups with many, many users. They say we have 10,000 users. But you look at their revenues and their financial, it's not adding up. Then when you narrow down, these are just free users. They are just relaxing in the platform. So it means there's a problem, because I know there's the strategy of freemium and all that, where you start onboarding people on a free use. But if it's taking too long to convert them into paying users, then there's a problem with the business model, or there's a problem somewhere. So there are three categories of traction. There's the users. Investors don't care so much about the number of users. They start caring about active users. Active users, the number is good. Yeah, we can start talking. But now we go down to paying users. Because if you have many active users and the math is not mathing in terms of financial, there's a problem. So traction, issues of paying users, revenue, and all that. And that also helps us know whether you are on the path to profitability. Then let me talk about scalability. Remember, if you are targeting venture capital and all that, the idea or the way venture capital is structured is that if I set up a venture capital fund today, the plan is I invest in 10 startups. I know that 8 of them will fail. Then the remaining 2 will return almost 100 times. And that return from the 2 will cover the losses of the 8 and even have over and above. It's a very risky math. 8 will fail. I rely on only 2 to return my money, plus all the amount that I invested in the other 8, and also have my profit. So that makes the VCs to be attracted to startups that can scale. And we are talking about scalability. We are also looking at the model of scalability. Because if you depend, is it easy to scale? If you depend in setting up branches in different countries and different regions, then it means your operation cost will be high. That is going to eat on the revenue. If it's a startup that you just make noise on social media and all that, and people register and they pay when you are asleep, looks good. Anyway, that is not always the case. But what I is trying to say, how easy is it to scale your solution without increasing operational costs, without a lot of logistics and all that? But the only way to grow times 80, times 100, times 30, scalability. Very, very important. Then value proposition. We are solving problems. And allow me to combine that with what I'll call competitive advantage. We are solving a problem. We are not interested in average problems. We are interested in painful problems. A problem that is painful means the customer or the user will be willing to pay for a solution to that problem. But again, we are interested in a problem that is affecting the masses. If it is only few people, then it means the market size is also not big enough. But what I want you to pick is that investors are interested in painful problems. Why painful problems? Because the user will be willing to part with money to relieve that pain. If it's a problem that they can live with, most in Africa, they can survive with it. Or if they have alternatives to relieve, good alternatives to relieve that problem, then they may not be very good customers. Sounds like a lecture. Any question? I don't want it to be a lecture. Any question? Any? Mnaelewa ama mna? Yes.
Your previous point about growth, and I think you started the lecture by saying that there is the mismatch between expectations of growth of the West and of Africa. So what's the line between, what's that balance between growth and growth that is relevant to Africa?
So when I was talking about scalability and all that, I talked about the venture capital. So the VC, the market is already talking about, and the innovators are already thinking about global problems, not just Africa problems. You understand? So if you can find a global problem that you have a solution that can be used globally and easy to scale, then that looks good. You understand? Yeah, but for the African context, I mentioned that the market is like trying to innovate around models of VC that can work for Africa. But it takes very innovative, creative innovators to find solutions to this problem and to navigate that. Yeah.
Hi, Shona from Cape Town, from Shona Group. I've got two questions. The one is around the charity model. That's how you started the discussion. We all know that disability is steeped in this charity and pity history. How can we look at the impact, economic value of the impact that's generated, and include that into the conversation? And then the other question was, it's easy to raise funds in the beginning based on selling the company, but once you start implementing significant regulatory processes within your company, you cannot fly by the skin of your ass and innovate and get it out and sell it before it's ready, because it has to be steeped in the regulations. And how do you manage that shift?
Yeah, very difficult questions indeed. Yeah, so you call it charity. I like calling it grant financing. Actually, equity-free financing. The reason why I call it that is to help innovators know that that money comes with a responsibility, and there's a lot of expectation. I think the word grant sometimes appear like you can use it the way you want and all those kind of things. So equity-free financing. Yeah, so for startups like AT, impact is very important. And one of the things I like for this session we're having, the team will just talk about M&D, which which most startups ignore. We don't measure impact, and we don't take track of impact. I don't know any startup with an M&D framework. None. But that becomes very important to qualify or to attract equity-free financing. Because this is an investor or a funder who is not interested in taking equity. They're just interested in the impact. But again, remember, it's not just talking about, I will create impact. There need to be an evidence that what you are doing, you are tracking impact and you can show impact. Yeah, so I think innovators need to track impact. It doesn't matter how small the level that you are at, but we need to have frameworks, M&D frameworks in place that will help us to track impact, and that can help us to attract grant financing. The other question I'm forgetting.
You were talking about having somebody in your team that can sell your product before it's ready. In the beginning, that's great, and it works like a bomb. But once your organization's matured and it's sort of entrenched in regulatory processes, you can't do that anymore. So how do you manage that?
Okay, that was an example just to show the innovators that we need to have a very balanced team because I've seen startup that everybody is an engineer. They have a very good solution, a very good product. Technology-wise, it is good. But there is no one to sell it to the market. Yeah, so that was just to give an example that even as we are building, then we need to think about go-to-market. And not just go-to-market, but very innovative go-to-market strategies that reduces the cost of product acquisition. Yeah, so let's up. We go back to yeah. Okay, you have a question? I have only 10 minutes. Allow me to complete, then we take the questions. Yeah. Identifying. Yeah, so due diligence. The journey of becoming investor ready, it starts internally. You start internally. Before you talk with any investor, make sure that your house is in order and everything is in place. What I like calling internal due diligence. You conduct due diligence for yourself. Exactly what an investor will do for you. You do it for yourself. So ensure you have all the documentation like a business plan. Ensure you have all the updated financial statements. This is where things always fall apart. You have a business plan, no financial statements. Issues of legal compliance. I've handled cases where the innovation is very good, but it's a registered business name. A very nice name. Is the investor who tells you now this is a personal entity. It's not registered as. It is not a registered company. It's not a limited company. Linda, I'm completing. So issues of legal registration, or your innovation is using an IP that is not yours. Issues of IP, very key. There's no way your innovation is leveraging an IP that is not yours, and you expect an investor to invest. That is a business that can be closed anytime. Clarity of funding needs how much, type of funding. How much do you need? Is it debt? Is it equity? Is it grant? Is it convertible notes and all that? Then also a pitch deck. These are just key, basic key. And mostly, I think for an early stage startup, this will do. Maybe I can add there an investment teaser. Then you start now to look outward. It starts with researching and identifying suitable investors. Not everybody who has money will invest in your business. Investors have what is called investment thesis. So you'll have a fund that, number one, they only invest in Series A and above. Your business is pre-seed. They are investing in AT. But the investment thesis is stating they invest from Series A and above. They are writing 1M and above. Your business is pre-seed, is in AT, everything sector is aligned. You need 100,000, and you are reaching to this investor. Will they invest? They will not. Or an investor is purely investing in fintech. You come with, you are developing wheelchairs. Yes, they are investing pre-seed, around 200,000. You need 200,000. Will they invest? No. Or an investor is investing in pre-seed, assistive technology. Everything is tech. But they are investing in South Africa, the South African region, or the West Africa region. You are operating in East Africa. Will they invest? No. So we have to come up with a list of investors that our business is aligned to their investment thesis. So it means, number one, as you are researching the investors, you want to understand what is their investment thesis. And you want to have only a list of investors that your business is aligned to their investment thesis. Because you don't want to reach out and you spend all long writing emails, asking for introduction, and you are introduced, then you realize that you are not aligned. So it starts with that. So have that list, follow these guys on social media, go to their events and all that. Get to know the different stages that they are in. Because an investor could be fundraising. The fund that they had, they have deployed. So they're actively fundraising today or in the next 12 months. So when they are actively fundraising, then it means it may not be the best time. As much as you are going to reach out to them, they are not going to engage until they close the fundraise. An investor may be a fundraise and they are actively deploying capital. The best time to engage. So what I'm trying to say, once you have the list of these investors, that your business is aligned to their investment thesis, it's good to follow them up, keep the relationship, connect with the people working there, attend their events and all those kind of things, so that you know what is going on and you can easily engage. So prepare for due diligence. I think that we've talked about. One of the things that I would like to say is, when you get an engagement, please assist the investor to do the due diligence. Make it easy for them. They will do it anyway. Cooperate, provide all the documentation, support them so that they can do that as soon as possible. Yes? So, Linda, I'm finishing. So, different financing grants, which I call equity-free financing, please. I don't like calling it grants because sometimes that has been misused. An innovator said that is a grant. I was in a program that an innovator went and built a 3-bedroom house in Western. What were Western Mtani Samesan with 500,000 that they were given. So please, it's not grant. I like calling it equity-free financing. We know that. We know angel. We know equity. I want to explain about SAFE and convertible notes as a model of. So SAFE. So SAFE is where we know that getting an accurate valuation for early stage startups is very difficult. Very difficult. So if you are early stage and you've done a good job and the investor want to put in money, it can be very difficult to value your startup. So what happens is the investor gives you money. Then you agree. The next time you are fundraising, that is when they will do the valuation. And based on that valuation, then their money will convert into equity. But you agree on a cap. In other words, we are saying that the next round of financing or of your fundraising, we will do valuation at that time because we'll have better traction and all that. But for me, who is putting money now, the valuation cannot go beyond this amount. Why? Because you have used the investor's money to achieve that. Does it make sense? You'll use their 100,000, 200,000 to achieve that next valuation. So you cannot just use that exact valuation to give them equity. So you agree on a cap. But it's a good way because it protects the innovator. I've seen innovators that when they were starting, they were given 100,000, they gave 10. My friend Uma just talked about that. After 3 years, they got 2.5 M. They were given 1 M, Kenya shillings, and they gave 10% equity. Just imagine. The investor is happy, the founder is not happy. But if they used a safe kind of deploying capital, that issue would have been sorted. Of course, the guy will get a better deal compared to the new investors. Then we have convertible notes. This is where you are given money in form of a debt. This debt has interest, not like banks, reasonable. Then at the point of your next fundraising, that capital that you are given plus the interest is converted into equity at that valuation at that point. So we call that convertible notes. So it keeps generating interest. Then we'll take all the interest. You don't need to pay back the money. You don't need to pay back whatever. But in your next fundraise, we take that interest plus the capital, then we convert it into equity at that valuation. I think I'll give it up to questions. Linda, you are giving us how many minutes for questions? I know I've 5. So we have only 5 minutes for questions. So those are areas you do due diligence. This slide can be shared. Does somebody who had a question? Okay. So we have only 5 minutes, so I'll take the questions, write them down, then I answer them.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, she made mention of the fact that you can't use the method of having someone advertising your product before it's ready at some stage. I don't know. I work at an international company, and what they do is just this. In fact, we the engineers who are still working on the product, it's not even ready, like 70, it's not even 50% ready, and we already have a deal. We keep working on it. So I want to ask, why does she feel that that method shouldn't work or won't work?
I think you didn't get me. Oh, okay. Asking. I think she'll respond to that.
Because I have a personal question. So, um, should I stand up? Yeah. So, as an innovator, like my um, my acquisition opportunity is based on Google Maps, like acquiring us. Having, because Google doesn't have indoor maps in Africa, what they have is outdoor maps. So I want to ask, at our level, what do you think? How do you think we can actually get from point zero to point one? Because this is a very, very, it's a very challenging field, and we as the founders, we're having serious difficulty actually getting from point zero to point one, because to actually get from point zero, we need to ensure that our the the acquisition of our onboarding clients is actually scalable, and we've encountered serious issues with getting floor plans of buildings. So let me just give an overview of what Wade Mobility is all about. So what we do is that we create AI-powered indoor maps. We digitize the traditional floor plans into, interactive digital maps that visually impaired individuals can actually use in navigating from point A to point B, just like in Marriott. We could, give accessible directions. Now, we are facing a very serious challenge right here. Now, the challenge we're facing is getting these floor plans. There are lots of things that we need to address, because buildings are having a lot of excuses for not giving us floor plans, and this is our only way of scaling across Africa in a remote way, that we don't have to go we don't have to have physical deployment or physical mapping of buildings. Yeah, so I just want to know, how do we move from this point to point one, where we can actually scale and reach our next acquisition goal, where we can now be acquired by Google?
So is it that only Google can acquire you? Yeah, that question has no right or wrong. I believe we can discuss further because it's a bit contextualized. So,
Yeah, thank you very much for the session. Sure, this session makes me shivers a lot, because we are really discussing real scenarios. But the most challenge that I see is most of innovators in Africa even don't reach the investor readiness stage. Because reaching investor readiness stage, it needs some funding, And I don't know how surely investors will help us, because I think we need to have investors that can invest in ideas, whereby we need to collect these juveniles, because basically, innovators in Africa are young people, who are just from school, and you may find sometimes they don't have even capital. But I think we need to have investors who can invest in ideas. They come, they pitch, they see the idea, then they select the best idea, then invest in it. Maybe I'm asking, how can we do this really?
yeah, so allow me to say that investor readiness does not need you to have money. If you've been keen, it's more of documentation and structures. I think your question is, how do we get investors for very early stage and idea stage? So we have angel investors, that will be willing to take the risk, just invest in you and in the idea. And most of the time, we use angel investment to build an MVP and to gain some traction that we can now show the investors. I know that angel investment in the East Africa ecosystem is still weak. And that is something that the ecosystem has been trying to build. And OCCA has been funding some programs to, really build angel investment in the ecosystem. Because that is a gap that we are having in Africa. We have good innovations, few angel investors, and therefore the innovators lack the initial financing to build the MVP and be able to attract the other funding. You had a question, or it's answered? Okay.
When you are talking about impact, you mentioned mostly the revenue side. So if our impact is mostly on like maybe community work and not really on revenue side, I'm just wondering if that's a problem.
Yeah, so impact, good. But when you're talking about an investor, it means there is the financial component. Yeah, so there are models that I think we maybe one day we can talk about business models for 80 startups. But again, it's also good to classify your venture or organization. Is it an 80 startup or is it an NGO? You understand? So there is a difference between an assistive technology startup and an NGO. So those are conversations that we can have.